we start with your name, your pronouns, and what do you do?
Okay, my name, should I look at you or there? Doesn't matter.
Whatever.
I'll look at you. It'd be weird to look here. My name is Marlysse Simmons. I go by she, her, and I am a pianist, composer, band leader, manager, arranger, educator, all of those things.
And where are you from, and how did you grow up?
I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, all over between Maryland, Virginia. My mother's from Chile, so I grew up with lots of visits to Chile, and my father's heritage is Italian American, and I grew up with, my mother played piano, so she was very adamant that I play piano. So I was in classical piano from age 5, 6 till basically 20, before I started to kind of venture out of that realm and do other things.
So I want to talk about more of your band. Would you consider it as a band or orchestra?
Yeah, bands. I have 2 bands.
So
2 ensembles.
So I want to start talking about
Sure.
Bioritmo.
Bioritmo.
First. So could you tell more about how did you join the band?
Sure.
And introduce what kind of music?
Sure. So Bioritmo is a band that started in Richmond before I joined. I joined probably about 10 years after they had been in existence. I previously, right out of college, I started to, in the DC area, there's a large, well, larger than Richmond, there was a kind of a vibrant salsa music scene and Brazilian music scene. So it took a few years after being in classical music for so long to venture into another world of music and playing improvised music and writing. But I started playing a lot of Brazilian music in DC, and then because of that connection, got pulled into the salsa music scene, and I was in a kind of one of the top bands for the area in DC for a couple years before I got a invitation to play with Bioritmo. So I wasn't living in Richmond at all, but I started to come down here regularly to play with them. And eventually is why I settled in Richmond, because Bioritmo was, and was more so back then, a very unique project. It was started by a mixture of people who met at VCU, musicians and artists and just music lovers, not necessarily professional musicians, but people who enjoyed playing Latin music, specifically music of called salsa. But salsa can be a very general term. So their inspiration is specifically Puerto Rican, New York salsa, which was a popular music in the 60s, 70s. That's when it had its heyday in New York City. It's a combination of influence of Afro-Cuban music with Puerto Ricans and American jazz musicians in mainly New York City. But that's the core of it. In reality, it was a thriving music that was kind of developing all over countries of Puerto Rico, Cuba, Puerto Rico, New York, Colombia, Panama. It's sort of like this circle of musicians that were all coming together in New York and just exchanging ideas and thriving. The Puerto Rican influence was huge because the Puerto Ricans were easily coming to New York City. So there was a very large Puerto Rican community of musicians that contributed to the music scene, or first generation Neo-Ricans. They call them people whose parents were of Puerto Rican descent but grew up in New York City, and that's really the core of it. And that music is for as a pianist. It was very far from this type of music I ever saw myself doing. But as soon as I started playing it in DC, I fell in love with the role of the piano, because I always loved to play rhythmic passages in my classical music, and the role of the piano in salsa is basically kind of like the role of a drum, and just to make it simplified way of explaining it, it's a rhythmic pattern, but you have the ability to be expressive with melodic movement and chord changes, and it's a very improvised style in one way. In another way, most of the songs are very always the same, and maybe some sections are more improvised. But as a pianist, I am also able to, I'm never playing the exact same thing every show. It's sort of like following chord changes. And so Biorhytmo writes original music, which is what intrigued me the most to come live in Richmond, because they, like I said, the salsa heyday was 70s, and so many music's heydays was that era, that there's a lot of salsa bands around the world that are just kind of like cover bands that play the hits, but I wasn't interested in just being part of, I always wanted to be part of a creative process, a movement to write original stuff. So with the sort of leaders of Biorhytmo, I was able to become part of the writing team very quickly because of my training as a musician. So I was able to, I wasn't trained as a arranger composer, but I quickly learned how to do everything once you're thrown into that environment. And so Biorhytmo's influence is all this music of salsa, classic salsa. It's called salsa dura in one way, classic salsa. But I'm using, that's the influence, but because myself and the singer Ray Alvarez and the percussionist Justina Riccio are the main writers, and we all are obsessed with so many cultural music, where there's no one music that we love, and we are obsessed with Greek music. We're obsessed with so many musics from around the world, and also American music. We just love everything. If that makes any sense. There's so many things we love. So our influence was this core salsa from the 70s, but in reality, everything we listen to and have experienced, and of course my classical upbringing as well, has been thrown into the music we write and arrange. So we try not to follow, it's not that we try not to, we just naturally aren't following a formula for the type of songs we write. Of course there's a formula because of salsa music having it's the way it's, but we try not to limit ourselves with things. So yeah.
Following up on what you responded, so you try not to follow the formula, is it intentionally?
Yeah, there's definitely been times when we're writing songs, and I guess from my point of view, I definitely try. If I want to get technically specific, a lot of salsa songs go 1-4-5 or 1-5-1. Very, just that chord change that defines so many popular musics around the world, really. And in that respect, I always try to maybe throw it off a little bit, and throw a chord or just a movement or change a note just to make it so it's not so predictable for me. But it's it's a taste thing, Yeah. Nothing too crazy. It's not super far out, but it's I definitely try to make I want to throw in little tasteful things.
And so I would like to talk about the other band.
Oh, Miramar. Yeah. Sure.
So as the co-founder of the band, could you talk more about how it was started?
Sure.
And what kind of music
Sure, yeah. So Miramar comes directly out of Bayo Ritmo in a way, because the singer and I were. So with Bayo Ritmo, there's lots of different salsa. Sort of encompasses many different specific styles that previous to people referring to salsa music, they would refer to songs more as the specific rhythms they were using, mambo, pachanga, just there's too many, and it's sort of just all collapsed and fell into salsa. But if you're a drummer or even as a pianist and a bass player, you learn to you study and learn about the specific things. So one of those genres of music that kind of falls under what salsa music did was boleros. And boleros is a genre of music that stands on its own, but often when Bayo Ritmo played shows, we would throw in a bolero. And a bolero is a simple way of defining a bolero. It's just a slower song. So it's a slower groove. It's not like it's a couple's dance. Still, like salsa is a dance, so, of course. Bolero is also a more of a slower couple's dance. It's usually a romantic song, romantic, tragic, or happy. It's often tragic, the lyrics. But in reality, for Ray and I, starting Miramar we were just honestly we were pretty busy with Bayo Ritmo at that point in our lives that we were happy always when we could play a slower song, and that we were just started to follow. We were always listening to certain boleros on albums that we just were like, oh, let's play this song. So we started covering certain songs, specifically Puerto Rican composers that we were. He's Puerto Rican, Ray is Puerto Rican, and also for me, I grew up. So I didn't grow up with salsa music, but I did grow up with boleros through my mother. From Chile, she brought there's certain bolero singers that I grew up with, or just kind of romantic singers of South America that I was familiar with, that Ray was not familiar with, coming from Puerto Rico. But there was some crossover, but we ended up starting Miramar because we wanted to have a music that we could showcase boleros, and also experiment with creative writing and writing songs in this genre. So in general, it's a slower. Not to say that Miramar now has, our first album was very traditional in a way, with the instrumentation of bongo, piano, bass. Ray sings and plays guido, and he sings duet with Laura Ann Singh, who's also they sing the songs together. We've definitely expanded though now with over the years that we sometimes write our music. Our songs are incorporating like more backbeat. So and that's something that's been done. So bolero songs, bolero is a genre that's slow and 4/4. Songs that started becoming a thing. The name bolero started officially, it was like 1890s in Cuba that someone penned the genre. But it was definitely just like a movement between Cuba, Puerto Rico, again the same, like Puerto Rico, Cuba, Puerto Rico, New York, and Mexico became actually the biggest exporter of bolero music. So the combination of all those countries and cultures, but really boleros is more so than salsa. Boleros are a universal genre from all the Spanish-speaking and Brazil, all the countries of South America, Latin America, all the countries of Latin America, and the Caribbean and Mexico, like boleros, and New York, like boleros was a universal because it's a much more accessible rhythm than salsa. It's something that that's a groove that is common. It's just 4/4, that nothing tricky like salsa. And it's, if you don't, even not understanding the lyrics, the sentimental feeling that comes across with boleros is universal, and just understanding and hearing. As far as I know, boleros too became, in my research, that the bolero genre, like the most popular song of bolero music is Bésame Mucho, which the whole world knows Bésame Mucho. It was an instant hit, and that song, you can look on YouTube and the Beatles are playing it. You find a band from Russia, Republic of Georgia, Vietnam, like the whole world has covered this song, and so I think in that respect we have now incorporated a lot of songs we're going to call boleros from other countries into our, not that they would be technically boleros, but they're boleros now because we play them. So yeah, Miramar is Miramar and Bayaritmo sort of come from the same. Me and Ray and I started it. Bayaritmo is a 10-piece band, 10 to 12 piece, with full horns and rhythm, like timbales and congas, and we have to have a full rhythm section for salsa to work. Boleros, you can get away with just Ray on guido or a bongo. There's a little bit more stripped down musical style.
And it seems like you and your band's musical interests are all over the world. You get inspired from different types of music.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other side, do you find anything challenging or interesting when you try to compose, arrange, or perform music that is originated or inspired from a different place in another place, especially in Richmond?
Yeah. Especially in Richmond. How so? What do you mean? Like
just another place.
Like how to playing other like different musics. Let's see. I think that I think that if I think about I'm going to think about some specific songs. There's we sort of probably outside of Puerto Rican, like outside of just like a more traditional bolero Latin music style, the one we've delved into the most is probably Greek music. And yeah, as a pianist, I have learned and studied just listening to Greek music from Greece, or specifically like Eastern European or Egyptian music, like Middle Eastern music. It's all sort of a blend for me in one way, but in my studies and trying to write in that way, I have studied like learning how to play piano a little differently, maybe for those songs, understanding how trills work. Mainly, that's I feel like my main thing, and how just a melodic movement versus a Latin song. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but the writing and with Bayaritmo too, like we wrote a song that we totally ripped off a Moroccan song. Like we took the beginning of it and put it right in our song, and that was fun. I think it's well received. I know that it depends on the audience a lot of times, but when we throw in different little things, people seem to enjoy it.
So you also do classical work?
Yeah, I mean, classical music's what I grew up with, so it's something that I can't ever escape.
Could you explain more about your turn, or like how different you're doing your classical work and also your band work?
How different?
Yeah.
Like the things. Yeah, I mean, honestly, when you talk about stuff like that, Are you did you study classical?
A little bit.
A little bit. So when I studied classical, and I was in that world for a long time, so it's very much part of how I compose, which I guess sometimes I regret it, because I met so many people who didn't have like that rigorous training, and your mind a little bit more free. I felt like it took like 10 years for me to really, from graduating college till, I felt like I was like 30 years old before I felt comfortable not having to read music, or just going to a piano and improvising. I mean, I loved it right instantly, but it was nothing that was ever, I just never explored that until after college. And when I did finally go, I studied jazz, of course. That was my other gateway into, there was a great jazz piano teacher where I went to undergrad at University of Maryland. And I wasn't officially in the program, but I started doing private lessons with him, and he had worked with a lot of people like myself, classical musicians who were trying to think outside the mindset. I mean, I always knew that I was different, in the class, because classical music world is I think any world, jazz world, like it was a very one way, one view environment that I was always searching and wanting more. And when I went to college, thinking I was going to get more, and I didn't. I was very confused, and I made my kind of circle of friends who all felt the same way, and it was okay to like listen to other music. It was like classical musicians are just listening to classical music, and I was like, what is wrong with you all? I find that for me, it's been much more fulfilling as a musician and as an artist and someone who wants to create and write music, to be able to do that, and not just I'm not just trying to interpret. I mean, I still do covers, but I love the biggest satisfaction for me is creating something new, and being trying to write things that inspire me. And it's a huge difference. I mean, as a professional musician, it's as a band leader, it's very challenging. It's not for everyone. I don't even know if it's for me, but I do it because it's just a lot of work to maintain a band, and maintain behind the scenes logistics of just running a band, running on a business that isn't generally super. There's not huge monetary, so you have to figure out ways to make it work. But you do it because you love it, and you're crazy.
So as each band member's personal interests form this band and that community, I think that leads to the ultimate question of
Sure.
What do you think is your role and the band's role in this Richmond music scene?
Okay. Sure. I mean, I feel very, very lucky. Richmond's been like great and frustrating because of the scene for international music is very small, compared to where I come from in DC. And then I also lived in New York for a few years, and of course that's like the ultimate. Everything's happening there. But at the same time, I am extremely fortunate to have found people that I can work with that have similar interests. Mainly Ray Alvarez and Justina Riccio, the singer and the percussionist, and Laura Ann Singh, who is, we not only have Ahmad together, we have this side project that we still haven't gotten off the ground of doing Brazilian well, we've gotten off the ground a little bit, but it's hard to have too many things going on. Brazilian music. I have another friend in town his name is Gary Kalar, who is, we have this project on the sitting there that's doing a lot of, he's a specialist in like music of Eastern Europe, Turkish music and Greek music, and we have collaborated on things. So I feel very lucky, even though Richmond's small, to have met and know people who share these interests, that we can sit around and listen to music together and talk and collaborate. I know that Bayritmo is Bayritmo doesn't play much anymore. We're actually playing Sunday, but we don't play much anymore because of it's been a long time. It's been like 30, who knows, 34 years, something crazy. And it's a big band, hard to make money, people have kids, and we haven't had a lot of, it's just one of those things. It's not, I don't think it'll ever end, but it's not in a creative, it's not doing anything great right now. And that's why I have Miramar, that I know for Richmond, you know, I'm lucky, I guess, that there's no other band like Miramar. I'm not competing, not that I would compete, but there's no, that style of music isn't so popular with musicians here, which is good and bad. When I lived in New York and having so many people doing Latin music, it was like overwhelming coming from Richmond where there's nobody and I'm the only person. You know, I'm trying to train a pianist right now. I'm trying to train her with how to play Latin music because I don't get so many calls, but I'm basically the only, well, there's a couple of us, but pianist in Richmond who knows like salsa or knows how to play Latin music. So I get a lot of calls, and I'm not really interested in playing gigs just for gigs' sake. So I don't really respond to those. So I'm trying to train this recent grad from VCU to learn how to play some Latin music. So as far as our role in the Richmond scene, I know that we have our, you know, one of the premier bands of Latin music. So whatever that, but also the region, and you know, I feel very lucky that like we are very connected to New York. We're going there in a couple weeks, and through New York, you know, through meeting people and working with labels in New York, and now we're working with a label out of LA. You know, like in the terms of the world, we have a place, which is a nice feeling. That we can, you know, have our music released and reviewed by people and stuff. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Sorry. I don't know. You can ask me more.
Before wrapping up this interview, is there anything I didn't ask about that you think I should know about any of your musics, or
Yeah, tell me.
background, or
Tell me again, just real quick, what you have to do for this project. Like, what do you have to
the
like?
main topic is the role in the Richmond music scene.
Oh, okay, so it is the Richmond music scene. The role of bands, or just
Or the musician.
the musicians
or
in the Richmond
figures,
music scene.
yeah.
Okay, that's the main topic of the role. Okay. Yeah, I think that. So there's probably one other band in Richmond that is doing something like Latin music. They're called Cadencia, and they do a very specific genre of music from Puerto Rico called bomba plena. And other than them, there's a couple other kind of Latin jazz groups, but there's no other groups that are like Bayritmo doing like salsa dura, and also there's no other groups like Miramar doing boleros. I know that I feel, you know, honored in that way that I can bring this music to people, especially in Richmond. I mean, because not many people know about it, right? So here, and so that's really a great feeling to be able to introduce this music to people. And it's also great that we have the support I mean, it's a small community of people who just always come to our shows or always help, promote us on the Instagram, and that's really helpful to keep us going, to have this community of fans who come to our shows and express their gratefulness or express how much they loved it. We just played a small party, but amazing parties. Like, for example, Sunday night it was a private thing, and it was so it's just great that there was it was just people who are open-minded, appreciative of hearing. There's no way they knew any of the songs we were playing, but they were into it, and I think that it makes it easy for us to thrive in Richmond with that type of mindset of people who are who are interested in the music. And I know that right now I feel like we're sort of, it's COVID ruined everything for a while, but before COVID there was a specific bar that was called Balaso that had a sort of a hub for going to listen to music that's not rock or pop or jazz, specific jazz, or it had jazz too. And now I feel like Reveler and maybe Gallery 5 are two clubs in Richmond that are like helping and promoting and excited. Oh, I also Get Tight Lounge, a huge one. So having the place and venues to play and perform and interact. So like when there's a bunch of Colombian bands that have been traveling and they always stop by Richmond and we've opened for them. So it's always like we always get the call if it's a Latin band, which is great and good and bad. And so it's I think that having the venues and the owners of these venues who are supportive of us and supportive of bringing in like different musics from around the world is huge. And as of like a few years ago, that was really lacking, but now it's kind of coming back. And then also having now in Richmond there is just as of a month ago, through the radio station WIR, there's a there's a program called Global A Go-Go, and that guy is known around the U.S., probably the world, for his radio show that features world music. And now he started kind of a promotional company called Secret Planet that is going to promote world music. And anyway, long story short, it's just like that, having that small community of people, and the Richmond Folk Fest, and people like Andy McGraw who are like bringing in people. So we're all connected, and we're all stay and try and support each other's events. And yeah, I think definitely Miramar and Bayarimo are like spearheaded the Latin music scene, which always was weird when we would travel like to New York or to Europe or wherever we go, because you want to say, oh hey, it's a band from, they want to always say it's a band from like New York, and then they're like, oh, you're from Richmond. Nobody knows where Richmond is. So a few times I lied. It's like, just say we're from New York. It's confusing to say. It doesn't make sense. But now it's like, I don't care. And I also think now it's almost cool to be like, no, we're from Richmond. It's like, oh, cool. Where's Richmond? So, yeah.
That's great.
Is that cool?
Yeah. I think that's all for
That's
today.
good.
Yeah.
That's it?